has been modified slightly because we certainly got new numbers from the state. However, the picture has not changed. You can still see we have accumulated GEA, and we still are not back to where we were as far as the gap elimination. We're still short $530,000 from where we should have been. Steve would like to go into some detail as it relates to this change.
Okay, so one more time I get to talk about this. So in addition to the situation with the gap elimination adjustment, we've also talked about how we've been underfunded in terms of the foundation aid. So I want to remind people what this is, that the taxes, the monies that state collects from residents of Seneca County, and I'm not talking about our school taxes right now. I'm talking about all the money that gets collected: income tax, sales tax, lottery tickets, everything that Albany collects that comes from Seneca County residents comes with a promise from your government that they will do certain things. Among those things is fund public education. They have a formula that they work on, and so they call this the foundation aid formula. This is the bulk of the state aid that the school receives every year. But there's a problem with it, and it's well known now that this aid formula is broken. It seems to be a mistake. And so over the years, since 2007-08, this is the number that the formula says are owed to the people of Seneca County for the South Seneca School District. It's in the neighborhood of $10 million each year. Instead, the money that we actually get is down here just under $8 million. And so they talk about this as a mistake. It's just kind of how the formula gets funded, and we know that there are big problems with it. Some schools get overfunded, some schools get underfunded. We're one of the ones that have been underfunded. And so we've been owed this money, but we've been getting this money. And so each year, this number is, the number that we actually got is $2.5 million less than what we were supposed to get. And then in 8-9, it was 1.7 million and 1.1 million, et cetera, et cetera. All of this has added up to a shortfall at South Seneca of $12,660,000 that was supposed to come to us, that just hasn't come. And you can complain all you want, but it's not coming. And so, on top of all of this is the part that kind of throws you over the edge, the more that you understand it, is this thing that we've been talking about for the entire budget season called the gap elimination adjustment. I took this slide directly from the statewide school finance commission. They're nice enough to run these numbers for all the school districts. These are numbers that we're pretty familiar with at this point. So in addition to that situation, we also have this situation where starting around 2010, Naomi's previous slide actually included a year before that. But starting around 2010, it was Governor Patterson's original idea that we couldn't balance the state budget, and so we really can't afford to send you the money that we owe you, and so we're going to take some away before we send it. And so it started out in the neighborhood of $1 million. It got a little bit worse. And so there's 1.4 million, 1.2 million. I've been sort of talking about this as about $1 million a year that gets withheld from our state aid, in addition to the shortfall of foundation aid. And so this is the money that we sent to Albany. They didn't send it back. Essentially, you know, you can think of it, the money's still there, it just got diverted somewhere else besides Seneca County. And so, you know, slowly, because people are talking about this, they're making it a little bit less that they take away. But it's as if, you know, they say, all right, well, we owe you this, we're only going to send you this, and then we're going to take away a little bit more, and And here's the new number each year of the stuff that we're going to take away in addition to all of that. That's the gap elimination adjustment that on this slide here adds up to $5.1 million. When Naomi includes another year behind that, it's up to over $6 million in addition to the 12 that we've been shorted. So the projected number for 14-15 is they're still going to withhold $530,000 from the gap, the gap elimination adjustment. It's going to be $530,000 for South Seneca. And so the thing that's been getting me a little bit angry, and I've been talking about it, apparently a lot of people heard me on the radio last week, but I'm objecting to the use of the word increase in headlines around the state. So it was very well publicized that there's a $1.1 billion increase in state aid in this budget compared to last year's budget. And even some other superintendents are talking about an increase in state aid when they compare last year's numbers to this year's numbers. And the analogy that I was using is it's as if yesterday was minus 30 degrees outside, today's minus 28 degrees, and somebody wants us to talk about the fact that it's 2 degrees warmer, and meanwhile we're all still getting frostbite. And so what I want you to understand is, I think the best way I can explain this is, like, look at from that number to that number, it went up a little bit. So the politicians really want us to celebrate that as an increase in state aid. That's what they want us to call an increase in state aid. They don't want us to talk about the fact that it was $2.5 million short the year before and $1.7 million short the year before that. And so as far as the GEA goes, last year's number was $830,000 they took out of the aid that they sent us. So they took away $800,000. That was last year. This year, they're doing us a favor, and they're only going to take away $500,000. And so what they really want us to say, and I can't actually believe that some superintendents do say this, but they say, hey, we got a $300,000 increase in state aid somehow. Because last year they took away $800,000, and this year they are only going to take away $500,000. There is no way that I can cooperate with that. I can't talk about this as an increase. I find it to be offensive. It's money that is owed to the district that is going to go somewhere else because it's going to solve somebody else's problem. We've talked about how here at South Seneca, the result of this is the loss of over 40 positions in our tiny little school. And if you think that doesn't hurt, it hurts a lot. And until we get back into positive numbers again, and until we're funded to the level that we're supposed to be funded, there's no way that I can contribute to a conversation where we've got an increase in state aid. And so this situation is still very grave. It still causes us to have to look at projections ahead about how long the school district can last. You'll see in our budget that's coming up, I think I'm going to need one of those throat lozenges. You're going to see in our budget coming up that we're going to still be using fund balance in order to balance our budget so that we can keep our tax increase to a reasonable level for our community. And so somehow the school district becomes the bad guy in all of this. And so I really desperately need everybody to understand what's going on. And so still somehow in the middle of all of this, I really want to continue to include the fact that, we've reacted to this, we've made decisions, and we can still today have a lot of pride in the program that we offer in terms of opportunity for our students, the education that we deliver, and our contribution in the community as a school district. So we're still doing the job that we're supposed to be doing, but it's not easy in the climate that we've got. So I'm personally not happy with the budget for the 14-15 year. I told our legislators that. I basically said to them, as far as I'm concerned, the GEA is your report card. If it's still there, you fail. If it's gone, you pass. And so that's the language that I'm using with Tomasano and Zolio, and I would encourage you to use the same. And so I'm done with this part.
So Steve just expanded on the fact that we are still in deficit as far as state aid is concerned. However, we're still required to put a budget together. So our 14-15 expenditure budget is a 1.7% budget-to-budget increase from the current year that we're experiencing. 3-year revenue, this is an important slide because I want to remind the community, and the board knows this, that our goal this year is longevity. We looked at cuts and cuts in program, cuts in staff, so that we could have longevity. This budget, based on revenue that we expect from the state, projected revenue in terms of tax levy, we need to use just those 2 revenue categories for long-term sustainability. So I'm looking now at the 14-15 budget. So the tax levy that's proposed, the state aid, and the other revenue, if you forget about the rest of it, those 3 items we should be living on. That would be full sustainability. Because of the gaps that Steve's described over the last 5 years, we've had to supplement that with our savings, with our fund balance. The goal would be to not have to supplement, to be able to live within those needs. So, because of the current conditions, we were able to change fund balance and reduce them to improve that longevity. And that's where the 1.7% comes in, budget-to-budget increase expenditure, also as it relates to revenue. 3-part budget summary. This is required by the state to show 3 different categories. Administration, basically, is the top portion that runs the schools, the salaries for the administrators, the Board of Education, supervisors. Capital is the debt the school incurs. Program is the instructional side. I have 14-15 in yellow, but if you compare it going from 13-14, and I'll focus on the percentages here. Percentage of administration went from 9.75 to 9.42. There is less focus or less funding in administration related to the total budget. Capital went from 28, just above 27. We have reduction in debt. That has come down. So you can see the increase in programming from 62 to 63. So the focus has increased in the instructional area. Adjustments were made to the budget. There were reductions in special education costs. We have had staff retirements. We restored and adjusted 3.95 FTE positions, including restoring half-time positions to make them full-time positions. We'll be offering a full sports schedule with South Seneca colors and team name. Our computer technology budget is going to match the expanded technology needs that the district requires. Whenever possible, we utilize state aid funds, BOCES funds, for example, instructional aid categories for purchases, because for every dollar that we spend, we get a portion back in our budget the next year. And we utilize $500,000 in budget contingency. Each year for the last 4 years, the sky was falling, and it truly was falling. We needed to respond to that, but we also had to be prepared for any other potential issue that we had to deal with throughout the year. That's called a contingency. So we have built in our budget over the last few years about $1 million in contingency. We have used $500,000 of that contingency to balance the budget, which means each year we're going to have less contingency. But that's what you do with longevity. You reduce your contingency and you work closer within your means. It's just a visual showing the budget summary from the expenditure side, and you can see certainly predominantly the program at 63% is where the bulk of our spending is going. Revenue breakdown shows 60% from state aid. It used to be 65%. So you can see the other categories of tax levy and fund balance have had to pick up the slack as the state aid has been reduced. What happens if the budget is voted down? Well, we could propose a new budget with attainable tax levy increase. There may be staff and expenditure cuts. The board and the superintendent would make that decision, and we would present a revised budget to the public June 17th. Or we could go to a contingent budget. The difficulty with contingent budgets after this new state regulation is that it would be a tax levy increase of 0%. That may have an impact of 189,000 of further cuts. So what might the contingent budget look like? Well, let's compare it to the proposed budget, $22,305,723. That's a 1.7% budget-to-budget increase, and that's staying within our tax levy cap of 2.66%. We can maintain our current staffing and restore 3.95 staff. We can purchase equipment as needed. We can continue our facility use procedures, and we can provide the supplies within our classroom budgets that students need. Under a contingent budget, there are certain exemptions, and one would be the tax levy. For example, the tax levy increase would be 0. If that were the case, the total budget would be $22,115,977. That would be a 0.8% budget-to-budget increase. Staff and program cuts may occur up to 189, almost 190,000. We would not be able to purchase new or replace equipment. That includes buses, computers, science equipment, musical instruments, security cameras, maintenance and weight room equipment. We would have to charge for our facility use, and we may not be able to provide those school supplies that students have enjoyed in the past. So the challenges to the district have been what they've been each year. We've adjusted each and every time. We've had reductions in our aid and budget. Steve showed you the detail. The GEA reduction for 4 years is over $5 million. CPI, our consumer price index, 1.46%. Does anyone of us believe that our consumer price index is only 1.46%? It's certainly been much greater than that in some of our expenditures. However, that's the cap that we have to work under. Expenditure increases of 3 to 4%, even higher in the case of pensions and health care, up to 7 and 8%. We have seen, and I'm sorry, Steve, I have the word increase in there. We have seen more aid from the prior presentation and from the governor's budget. However, this number needs to be revised. At the governor's budget, it was less than 1%. With the legislative budget, it's 1.9%, far below the $5 million or even the $530,000 that we're still not receiving. Our property tax cap is restricted to as little as 2%. So, using our property tax cap, 2.66, what might the estimated tax rates be for 2014-15? I want to be very clear, these are projections. Tax rate, we do not determine. We determine tax levy, and this is averaged over total assessments for the school district boundaries. We do not make those assessments. We don't add, we don't subtract, we don't revise in any way. So the tax rate is based on that final number that comes from the town assessor. So doing what I normally do when I budget and act conservatively, I'm doing the same with the tax rate. These are conservative numbers, and which means they are projected higher than what they would be expected to be. But under this term, going out with a 2.65%, just slightly below the tax cap, the tax rate, excuse me, my turn, of 16.55, which is the current rate, may increase to 16.98. What would that impact be? I'll just pick a few of these to show you. So a house that's assessed at $100,000 currently pays $1,655, would increase to $1,698. That's a $43 annual change, or $3.58 a month. If I go up to $200,000, a tax increase from $33.10 to $33.96. That's an increase of $86 for the year, or $7.06 $17 per month. With adjacent areas. So we're looking at Waterloo, Seneca Falls, Romulus, South Seneca in yellow, and Trumansburg to our south. These tax rates of theirs, so these were actual tax rates that were on their tax bill. Please notice for 2012-13, so we're going back 2 years now. Seneca County Waterloo was $21.98. Seneca County was, Seneca Falls was $23.03. And Romulus was $18.73. That brings Trumansburg in at $19.05. I put in the proposed 14-15, and again, this is conservative, tax rate that South Seneca may be at for 14-15 of $16.98. So 2 years later, we are still less than all our contiguous districts. I think that's important to see. I think a lot of credit goes to the superintendent and the board keeping those tax rates within what I would say is reasonable compared with our other districts in the area. So we've enjoyed community support with our budget votes. In the last 12, we have, the community has passed 11 out of 12. The only one is going back from 2003-04, where the tax levy increase was 21%. We're certainly not at that stage now where we're asking the community to approve that. We are asking for a 2.65% tax levy increase. We don't yet know who's voting, but we only need a simple majority of 50% from the community to pass our budget. So just a reminder, and I won't go through all of it, each of the board meetings, the board has heard each and every department within the district. We talked about athletics, facilities, transportation, instructional, buildings, business office, the debt, and all through the process, we started with a 3.15% rollover budget increase. And we are now, as of April 9th, at our final budget, again, $22,305,723, a 1.7% budget increase with a 2.65 tax levy increase that will be presented to the community. Just a reminder, the budget hearing, you can hear me go over this information again and ask questions at will be May 13th in the Ovid Auditorium. The vote will be held here on May 20th in the Elementary Auditorium from 1 to 8 p.m.
Any questions for that?
Naomi and Steve, one of the rollover items through the years has been unfunded mandates. And that's every year, and it's passed to us to do something without funding. So we've raised what we have to do, and our taxes have gone up. The governor, of course, hasn't raised taxes. He's the hero. Somebody here is the goat. So perhaps you want to mention that at your hearing, that unfunded mandates, along with, foundation aid and all, and explain that.
Well, it had been mentioned at every step along the way that along with some of these realities of having to do with less, there would also be some relief from the mandates. That's never happened. And so the mandates have only gotten bigger. We've seen presentation after presentation about what they are and how New York State seems to have a lot more than most states. Very much, in addition to a lot of the federal mandates. And so, yeah, it's a very big issue, and it just keeps coming. It seems like with every new interpretation of the rules, there are more things that schools are being asked to do without the funding to do them. So the mandates aren't slowing down, and the funding doesn't come along with it. You're exactly right.
One other item, or one thought. I guess this state has been built because of public education, and yet the legislators set up that budget. This is reported to me at my TSD meeting, and yet the state ed was never involved in any of it. So there's a separation of who's in control of public education.
Yeah, that's true too, and it's important to know that. I've had meetings with the state ed people as well as the legislative side, and it's most appropriate really to bring your issues with the implementation of the Common Core standards, your standardized testing, the APPR issues. Those are mostly state ed controlled, although state ed will defer some blame for APPR to legislation as well. But when it comes to the state aid stuff, the funding, the state ed people are just lobbyists like anybody else, and so they have to talk to the legislature in order to make anything for that to happen. It happens in the Assembly, in the Senate, in the governor's office, all this stuff about state aid. The education side, you take your issues to the state ed department. The state aid stuff has got to go to the legislature, and that is important to know. I guess I will say this though, let's not let state ed completely off the hook, because they're talking to these people all the time. They do have a lot of influence. Many of us have said to the commissioner that he could probably do a better job than he's doing to help tell this story around the state. He leaves it to the local districts to do it. And oftentimes we feel like, at every turn, we're the bad guy. I was at a meeting not too long ago where some superintendents, flat out told the commissioner that you've thrown us under the bus. When you say some of this stuff, that was a local decision to be made, that's what your district decided to do. Go talk to your district. We don't feel that kind of support. And then he knows exactly what's going on with these budgets. He knows what the impact is. And we're still going 100 miles an hour, and we can debate that all day. But I guess the accountability on the part of state ed is to help us tell the story about the challenge of all of this in this economic climate.
Just one other item. Is this a good time to talk about the spot on the Facebook, not Facebook, but your webpage, about talking to legislators? Because
sure.
The meetings we go to, it's the average person, not the hired people, which is you and Naomi, talking to the legislators, but our community talking to them. If you go to that webpage, it'll probably walk you right through some areas to get in touch with your legislators.
I'm glad Roger's here tonight because he's bringing up a lot of good stuff. I was just talking to Fran Kopp, who wrote to me and said, Steve, are you telling people about this? Do people understand this? And I said, Fran, I'm trying. I'm telling everybody that I can think of, but the politicians have really got this figured out. And they've done a great job of portraying the superintendents as a bunch of whiners. So as soon as I say I'm the superintendent of schools, they get that look in their eye like, okay, I've heard all this before, so come on, whine away. But it's really, really important for your representatives to hear from you, the community members who vote in numbers. Because what I'm told is that makes a much bigger impact with them than hearing the same story from the superintendents. I was meeting with the music teachers this morning with the principals, making the exact same point. I see Jennifer up there. She's already volunteered to come with me to go to a meeting with the legislator. I never did make that happen for this session, but it's still on my mind. And I said that to the music teachers too, is what I need is for people to come with me and talk about, the personal impact on their own children, on their own programs, on the things that they do, so that the legislators can have this in their heads when they're making their vote. I personally don't understand when it seems like out of that $1.1 billion, so much of it going to New York City and to charter schools and to Long Island, how an upstate legislator can cast their yes vote for that. And I know it's a little complicated that I'm trying to say, and I'm just talking about schools, and they have to think about everything else, but, they've heard a lot from us, and they stood in front of us, and they said they were going to do something about GEA, and I don't think they did enough. And they need to keep hearing from everybody. And the best that I've got is to be able to say, I'm here representing a couple of thousand people from Seneca County who pulled the lever in the ballot box in November. And I'd like to be able to say that you did a good job, but so far I haven't been able to say it. So, I don't want to, campaign against them. But I would like to be able to say, they finally did it. We finally got rid of GEA. And so far, I haven't been able to say that.
Naomi and Steve, thank you and your staff for the hard work concerning this budget presentation and the time put in. I think we started back in October, maybe. And it is a long process and a lot of time and energy involved in it to get to this point. And we think. Move on now to receiving reports. Steve, Superintendent, report, please.
So Chuck's here. I had a nice meeting with Chuck Bosman last week, and he told me a lot of details about the effort